Well, those protests are set to continue tomorrow, but already some progress has been made on providing for poor students. Cabinet has agreed funding should be prioritised from the budget of higher education to help pay for those who deserve a place. I'm joined now by the Wits Vice-Chancellor, Professor Zeblon Vilakazi. Good evening, Professor. Thank you very much for your time. There's a great phrase that you're using, which I think pulls it all together well. You're calling for more light, less heat. How much light, talks, engagement, even the tone of protests, how much light is there at the moment?
In this fog of conflict, obviously, there's a lot more, emotions are high, which, is understandable. So, but at some stage, there has to be a meeting of minds. And I'm only speaking here from the point of view of the university I represent, which is Wits, that we have sped up the process of continuing our conversations with the student representative leaders to, keep on talking, getting a dialogue going, so that you actually have a meeting of minds and try to bring a speedy resolution to some of the things. Obviously, as you mentioned earlier, it's not a Wits problem, it's a national problem. But I think once jurisdiction ends within Wits, I can only deal with local Wits issues in terms of the engagement with our constituencies.
It's heartening to see that there was a very different tone coming from the police during protests. And I know that policing off campus is not your jurisdiction, but those students are, wherever they are your students. What is your message to them about the way the police handled their protests yesterday?
I'm going to reiterate what already has been articulated before. Obviously, I'm not a police expert, but I would have thought, with students, these are not criminals, these are students. You might agree or disagree with them. I'm sure that there are better ways of handling student protest, especially on the streets of Johannesburg. So that is, I'm just as gutted at the loss of life of the deceased, and our condolences go to them as well.
Wits has been saying that 95% of registered students have been catered for, and that was before the extra money that you have now announced. I know that there was a hardship fund that had already been established even before these protests began, but there's more money now. So with this extra money that has been provided, how many students can you cater for now? And give me the raw numbers of how many are still going to be left out, because I think it's those that are left behind that everyone's concerned about.
Yes, I mean, the 95% is, I would say, the top level number that can come out of my head. These numbers are not fixed. They keep on moving. There's a lot of moving parts in this equation. Just to explain slightly, there's about 8,000 students in the university are in the high-risk category. Yes, they sponsor scholarships to come in, new sponsors to come in, and then the university is able to help some of them. So therefore that number has now gone down to about 1,500 that have presented hardship case. The university, the latest information I got from the Chief Finance Officer, is that about 750, about 60% of that 1,250 students have not been catered for. So there is about between a range of 400 to 700 that we think are in a very fragile position, which is why we have extended. Which is why we have extended our registration to allow for that.
So you've got 400 to 700 students who I presume then haven't qualified for NSFAS, and you're worried they might not be able to pay for the year. Is that right?
And the current internal university resources might not cater for.
What are you going to do?
We just need to get those numbers right.
Sure. And I know that more money has been made available.
These numbers are moving so fast that you cannot give you a fixed number.
Yeah, well, and it's moving in the right direction, which is great. You've extended registration. What if more potential students register? How will you be able to accommodate them? Because, of course, we know that what the students want and what the ANC government has promised is that all deserving students from poor and working class families must be accommodated.
During the COVID period last year, when we had to decant campuses, we were cognizant of the fact that not all students have good data and also the conditions that allowed them to conclude their studies successfully. Then we made provision for those students to come to campus, obviously under strict COVID conditions, lockdown conditions, to avoid a super spreader. Likewise, this year, for students that put forward a case that clearly shows that they're not able to work from home or in the environment nearby, we work through the dean of students who has a particular process of working through the risk councils with those students. However, I think one has to be cognizant of the fact that we are, after all, a university that has to comply with national regulations in this period.
Are you saying to me?
You cannot have.
I hear you.
You cannot have too many people clustered in one space.
Is your total student body just under 40,000 still?
37,500, but about 39,000 if you include postgraduates that are registered.
All right, and of that amount, there's only 400 to 700 who have not yet made a place for, but you're working hard to get that. There's much talk that historic debt should be scrapped. Is that actually a realistic suggestion? I know that Wits has about R1 billion owed to it, and you made such a good point when you were speaking earlier, where you said if we give too much towards scrapping debt, etc., we're not going to have money for the incredible research projects we do. And if you think of the role that universities have played around COVID, if we think of what's happened in UKZN with the genomic sequencing that has been astonishing, even the Wits vaccine trial, it is a very, very difficult balance. Do you think that historic debt simply cannot be scrapped if universities ultimately, down the line, generations to come, want to stay viable?
Yes, sorry, that's the point I've always been making, that, this Vice-Chancellor can take such a rash decision. But the reality of the matter is that what does the next Vice-Chancellor have? And the students that will come, and the grandchildren of these current students. As I mentioned earlier, universities are by their very nature institutions that endure for generations. The decisions we take now will not be felt, the impact will not be felt, might not be felt in the next 2-3 years, but they will reverberate down the line. Great universities of the world have endured for 1,000 years because there was a particular decision-making process that was guided by clear understanding of the situation. Right decisions were made not to throw the university's sustainability into peril. With student debt, obviously the first thing that you can manage from within the university is just to contain it and try to arrest it, because it has doubled over the last 5 years. And if you add the compound, the compound interest, numbers might start running around and they can go exponential. So what we are trying to do now is, with a bit of luck, if there is, we are working on many schemes like with the university turning 100 years old. We actually potentially are starting a major student endowment as part of the broader centennial strategy of increasing our endowment. Of course, endowment covers many things, like as you mentioned, research, funding of equipment, and also augmentation of salaries here and there. So I think that is what is one of the campaigns we're trying to.
And that's one of the long-term plans that I suppose you have to attend to while dealing with the short-term crisis. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I do appreciate it. Wits Vice-Chancellor Professor Zeblon Vilakazi. Now,